Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this public meeting under the Planning Act to order. I do want to just underline, well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Second, this is a planning meeting, and then we will have our budget meeting immediately following this. I know there may be at least two people here and staff here for the budget meeting, but we do have this planning meeting first. So it has been moved by Councillor King that the agenda for the January 8th, 2018 Special Committee of the Whole Public Meeting under the Planning Act be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is done at every meeting. I wonder if any members of council have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose with this application.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, and that can be noted in the minutes. Now we move to the Planning Act application. And I do have some notice requirements that I'm to make here. The Planning Act requires under section 3412 and 5120, the council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw, draft plan of subdivision, or draft plan of condominium. This public meeting has been called to satisfy these requirements. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on December 19th, 2017. The notice was provided information on the property, the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw, and the proposed changes to the draft plan and the proposed condominium. In order to provide information, we'll also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table, and I believe it's here in the middle. We would ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the passage of an amendment by council should this occur. If a person or body decides to file an appeal of a decision made by council in respect to the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw, modification of the draft plan of subdivision and draft plan of condominium, and does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the proposed amendment and draft plans are adopted or refused, the Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of that appeal. In closing, we stress at this point no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the draft plan of subdivision and condominium, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their considerations. So I believe we start with presentation from our planning staff. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. LaRocque.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm pleased to be here tonight in front of you for the first time to present this public meeting for applications for zoning bylaw amendment, modification to the draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium for Saffron Meadows. I'm sure most are familiar with this property. It's located south of Port Robinson Road and west of Rice Road, and is bordered to the north by the East Fonthill mixed-use development, to the east by Rice Road greenhouses and various residential uses, to the south by residential use, and to the west by agricultural use. The current draft plan allows for 63 street townhouses and a minimum of 51 block townhouses, which is proposed to be reduced to 48 street townhouses and increased to a minimum of 70 block townhouses. The zoning change will permit the block townhouse use instead of street townhouses, as shown on the applicant's site plan, which I will post in just a few minutes. The condominium application will allow the development of the 51 block townhouses known as Saffron Commons. For council's information, the property has historically been vacant and used for agricultural uses, And in December of 2016, council approved the draft plan and zoning for Saffron Meadows. And in April of last year, town staff met with the applicant regarding these applications for a pre-consultation meeting, and then those applications were submitted to the town in October of last year. And that brings us to tonight's public meeting. This is a copy of the revision to the draft plan. The changes relate to Block 83, which I know it's difficult to see on this, but it's the most, the portion on the right-hand side of this drawing. And so what has happened is there were previously 3 blocks there, 2 for street townhouses and 1 for block townhouses, and those have been merged into one large block, now known as Block 83, which is to be used for just block townhouses. And for council's information, this is the draft plan of condominium for Saffron Common. It shows the location of the 51 block townhouses and the associated roadways and parking areas. According to provincial policy, the property is located within a settlement area where the development is to be directed and a range and mix of housing types provided. The Greenbelt Plan and the Niagara Escarpment Plan do not apply to this property. The property is designated Greenfield area with environmental conservation on it in the regional official plan, and regional policies require that Greenfield areas be developed to densities of 50 jobs and persons per hectare and as complete communities. With respect to the environmental conservation area designation, environmental impact studies were completed before the original draft plan approval, and the current applications don't propose to change any of those areas. The town's official plan designates the property as Greenfield Overlay and East Fonthill Secondary Plan area. It also includes East Fonthill Low Density Residential Designation, East Fonthill Medium Density Residential Designation, and Environmental Protection 2. It also denotes that it has the presence of a highly vulnerable aquifer, a stream, and a regional life science ANSI, the wooded area on the southern portion of the property. The Greenfield Overlay areas are meant to achieve the density of 50 jobs and persons per hectare, and permitted uses in the East Fonthill Low Density Residential Designation includes single detached and semi-detached dwellings, accessory apartments, home occupations, and within the East Fonthill Medium Density Residential Designation, additional residential uses such as townhouse units, small-scale apartment buildings, accessory apartments, secondary suites, live-work units, housing for seniors, and home occupations. And of course, the uses for the lands in the Environmental Protection 2 designation are limited to conservation-type uses and small-scale passive recreational uses such as trails that don't negatively impact the natural heritage features. The town zoning bylaw has many zonings for the property because it's meant to reflect all of the uses that are permitted within the Saffron Meadows plan of subdivision. And so many residential uses such as triplexes, semis, duplexes, singles, towns of different types, fourplexes, conservation uses, and recreational uses. So the proposed change that we're looking at with the current zoning bylaw amendment would change the portion that I showed you at Block 83 from the RM1 274 zone and RM1 267 zone to permit the condominium development as it's shown on the site plan.
Sorry. Can you just go back?
Sure.
So it's the orange portion, is that correct?
Oops. So there are 2 zoning schedules shown on this slide.
On that.
So the
Oh,
one
right, okay.
to the left
Yep.
is the RM1 274 zone.
Right.
Those were the portions that were zoned for street townhouses.
Right.
And on the right, the remaining orange, those are all the pieces that are going to be blended together
Right.
to be this new RM1 267 zone, which will permit the block townhouse development.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is the site plan. It shows the location of all of the block townhouses and the setbacks for them. And so the site-specific zoning will actually recognize all of those setbacks. There will be specific provisions that allow accessory dwelling units above a garage, reduce the minimum front yard, establish a maximum front yard on a street, increase the front yard for garages on an internal roadway, reduce the side yards, rear yards, and setbacks between the sides of townhouses. There will also be a requirement for all driveways and garages fronting on Port Robinson to be located on rear lanes. As well, there will be the removal of the minimum floor area for dwellings. A notice was circulated to agencies, town departments, and members of the public who own property within 120 meters of this property on December the 19th, and notices were also posted along Port Robinson and Rice Roads. And this is a summary of the comments that were received. Of note, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and the Niagara Region offered no objections to the applications, provided that the draft plan conditions were modified or appropriate draft plan conditions were included in the condominium agreement. And there were technical comments provided by Public Works and Fire, which can also be addressed with draft plan conditions. We did receive one written comment from some members of the public that came in after the planning report was written, but it has been included in the package. And I will summarize. Doug and Celeste McCollum submitted some concerns that the natural vegetation on Block 84 being lost to development would impact their privacy and view. They're concerned also about the traffic impacts resulting from new road accesses to Rice Road and increased traffic due to the development. In conclusion, the proposed modification to the draft plan of subdivision will permit fewer street townhouses and more block townhouses. The proposed zoning change and draft plan of condominium applications will allow the development of the 51-unit block townhouse development known as Saffron Common. And I would add that no recommendations have been made at this meeting, nor will any decisions be made. And if there are any follow-up questions after tonight, please feel free to contact me.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions for Ms. LaRocque on the presentation at this point? We will be hearing from the applicant if they want to add anything, and then we'll open it up to the public. So just really anything on the presentation. Councillor Rivyak?
Just some clarification with regard to the plan itself. What I'm seeing from what was put up there were two accesses on Port Robinson Road. And what is it? Is it one access or two? I'm just trying to clarify on Rice Road.
Ms. LaRocque?
Based on this site plan for Saffron Common, it actually shows two accesses.
Right, on
Port Robinson.
On Port Robinson.
Port Robinson Road, yes.
And on Rice?
None on Rice.
Rice, I will go back to that slide.
Because I see an internal road that kind of heads east, and I'm not sure whether it gets to Rice or doesn't get to Rice. That's what I needed to clarify.
Is it Street B that you're inquiring about, right here where the map is?
Yeah, on this particular drawing that I'm looking at doesn't say Street B, but it's just south of Port Robinson Road.
The condominium itself will not connect directly to Rice Road.
Okay.
The connections are further south in the subdivision.
Okay, so it's not part of this plan at all. It's terrific. Thank you. That clarified it for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CAO? Want to just comment on, is that potentially stormwater access? Is that
Yeah.
what the council might be looking at as a stormwater access? I'm not sure.
I think
Anyways,
perhaps
well-
it's a rear lane, because just looking at the drawings.
Yes, but it terminates, I believe. Is that, can you assist the councilor on that?
Do not connect to
Good,
Rice
okay.
Road.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I wonder if the applicant wants to add anything to this or have a presentation. I think you do.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Vita from Upper Canada Consultants. I'm the agent here on behalf of Hurt Inc. and Grey Forest Homes. The application before you this evening includes red line revision to draft plan of subdivision, draft plan of vacant land condominium, and rezoning. And the draft plan of vacant land condominium is to create the boundaries of ownership within a condominium townhouse block. Since Shannon did a very detailed presentation, I'm just going to keep it short and focus more on the design details rather than the planning and the technical aspects. As you're aware, there is a draft approved plan of subdivision in place to permit the development of 12 hectare parcel of land that runs along Rice Road south of Port Robinson Road. The currently approved plan permits a total of 183 dwelling units with street townhouse concept fronting onto Port Robinson Road. The concept that you see here is the currently draft approved plan showing the 3 blocks along Port Robinson. Due to a recent boundary adjustment and ownership change, the lands along Port Robinson Road are now wholly owned by Hurt Inc. In order to provide for a more comprehensive plan, the draft approved plan is proposed to be modified to adjust the lotting along Port Robinson Road, and the remainder of the plan will remain the same. The revised lotting proposes 1 large block of land along Port Robinson Road, which would be used for a condominium townhouse block with 2 access points from Port Robinson. There's a blow up of the block, the change. It's now 1 larger block rather than the 3. The units fronting onto Port Robinson Road will now be part of a larger condominium block rather than being a separate entity, providing the opportunity for a consistent streetscape along Port Robinson. The layout shows the proposed site plan for the red line block on the screen. The block contains 51 bungalow townhouse dwellings with an internal private driveway. There are 2 proposed access points from Port Robinson Road. 1 here and 1 here. I think previously this was the laneway that was referred to, but it doesn't actually connect out to Rice Road. It does terminate internally. In order to accommodate the entrance points to the development, there are 2 units that flank or side onto Port Robinson Road. Units 7 and 24. That's these 2 units here. These 2 units have custom designs to provided by the builder, showing how, although these units are flanking Port Robinson, they are designed to actually look like the front of the dwelling. Some of the design elements include enhanced architectural designs, larger decorative windows, decorative covered porches, dormers, articulation in the wall of the dwellings as well as in the roof lines to provide interest and enhance the streetscape. The designs propose a variety of high-quality building materials which all serve to enhance the streetscape in this area of Port Robinson. Each unit is also proposed to have a walkway connection from the front door that connects to the public sidewalk along Port Robinson. So you can see these sidewalk connections here to each dwelling out to Port Robinson sidewalk. All of these design elements combined will create a high-quality, well-designed community. The units have been custom designed with special attention to the creation of an attractive streetscape, including the provision of rear laneway products. The application before you this evening are all required in order to implement the changes that I have outlined to you. The applications are technical in nature, but will provide for a high-quality, well-designed community that will be an asset to the town. Hurt Inc. and Grey Forest Homes have put forth significant effort to improve the plan layout and provide the beautiful renderings that I've shared with you this evening. I've given a copy of them to each of you as well. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Vita. Questions for our presenter, Councillor Lane?
Yes, on the The one street internal to this, it looks like a dead-end street, the one that goes almost to Port Robinson Road. It's on the right-hand side of the drawing.
This
Is
is
that in
gonna-
fact a
Just give her,
dead-end street?
give her a second there.
Okay, well,
There we
This
go.
one here? Right here?
yes,
Yes, that's a dead end. So
Okay.
this will serve as a rear lane for these units that front onto Port Robinson, but it doesn't connect through to Rice Road. There is a landscape buffer between the end of the laneway and Rice Road.
I guess my question is if, for example, fire or ambulance or whatever had to get into this area, then they can get in, but they can't get out? Is that the idea? They would have to drive in and back out if that particular laneway?
The fire route will mostly be on Port Robinson for these units. So the fire trucks will stay on Port Robinson to service these.
Well, that's true if in fact the fire is fronting onto Port Robinson, but if there's something happening in the back here, then there will be a way to get out of that dead-end street as I see it, but.
Yeah, internally there is circulation. We have circulated the plan to fire, and they haven't commented that they have any issues with, like, the plan that's been laid out does meet the standards. But my understanding is that the units fronting onto Port Robinson would be accessed right from Port Robinson if need be.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Lane?
Yes, one more if
Yeah,
I
go
may.
ahead.
I love this, it's beautiful. I don't know where you got these particular big trees, but that looked nice on the picture. Is there any allowance for trees along the boulevards and everything that they're gonna be in here? I'm always concerned with new subdivision
Right.
that we, they look nice, but we don't have enough grass and we don't have enough trees to, to handle the, quote, the environment, if you will.
Yes,
Vita,
as,
is that- yeah.
as a condition of draft approval, we are required to prepare a streetscape plan, which shows the proposed boulevard trees, which are meeting the town standards along Rice Road as well. The region has certain standards in terms of what trees and the spacing and things like that. So that is a condition of the approval that we have to satisfy prior to
Thank
moving
you.
forward.
All right, thanks very much, Ms. Vita. Others? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly through, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Vita, the approximate average size of these townhouses, would it be 1,600, 1,700 square feet, do you know?
1,400.
14 would be the largest? Is that a minimum, or is there, that's the average?
They range from 1,250 to about 1,450.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's great, thank you. Any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation, we appreciate that. And now is the opportunity for the public to provide input. We do have that letter that Ms. LaRocque had outlined earlier from DNC McCollum, really regarding a different section of the plan, not this particular area. Is there any members of the public here that wants to provide any input? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move to members of committee. If you have any further input or any comments or questions for either staff or the applicant or in general, I'm going to turn to Councillor Kersey.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
then to Councillor
Mayor.
Ribbiak.
My comments will be very brief. Council, I think this plan encases the vision that we had for the development along Port Robinson Road. You remember the development that we looked at previously and some of the concerns we had here. The developer has taken it to heart and has incorporated the rear lanes. He's brought new urbanism at its best to us tonight, fronting on the street, engagement with the street, eyes on the street, all of those things. And I'm sure they'll be landscaped adequately. Councillor Lane, our staff will look after that on the site plan. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm thrilled to see this, and we'll definitely be supporting it as we go forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Ribbiak?
Much the same, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to express my appreciation for the extent to which the developers have gone to understand our vision and want to put it into effect. So I think this is a whale of a presentation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Papp?
Well, to echo my colleagues, and also I'm very happy to see that you increased the number of units, which was, I was trying to do some quick math, and I realized afterwards that you've increased it by almost 20 units or so, which is, and you've made them fit within the context of the whole application, which is needed because we know they'll be quickly gone. Excellent job.
Thank you. Any others? Just to comment as well, I know that the change of ownership of the property helped considerably with this plan. And so I think council appreciates that and appreciates the owner's willingness to work together with the town, and you heard council colleagues talk about that. And as well, the builder coming forward with a very, an excellent product. So we look forward to this type of product being built in our community and working together with you on this. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of the efforts. Thank you. I believe we need to receive things now. So it has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor, we don't need a seconder, sorry. But Councillor Durley put his name to it anyways.
The correspondence.
Oh, for the correspondence, I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you. So Councillor Lane has moved that Committee of the Whole receive the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as pertains to application file number 2016-19-02014, 26CD19-01017, and AM 0917 regarding part of Lot 171, Geographic Township of Thorold, Town of Pelham, and the committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report for this topic for committee's consideration. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. And Councillor Durley has moved that the correspondence from D&C McCollum be received. I'm going to call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we move to our next planning application. Thank you. And I'm going to read the notice requirements for this as the clerk changes the slideshow. So the Planning Act requires under Section 22 that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public of the proposed amendment to the town official plan. This public meeting has been called to satisfy these requirements. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on December 19th, 2017. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed amendment to the official plan. In addition to planning staff providing information on the application, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table, which we ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the passage of the amendment by council should this occur. If a person or body decides to file an appeal to a decision made by council in respect to the proposed amendment to the official plan and does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the proposed amendment is adopted or refused, the Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of the appeal. In closing, we stress at this point no decision has been made on the proposed official plan amendment, and therefore any comments received will be taken into consideration by council in their consideration. I would turn to Ms. LaRocque for her presentation. This is regarding the East Font Hill low-density residential policy. Ms. LaRocque.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm happy to present to you now about the East Font Hill low-density residential policy. The proposed change would be official plan amendment number 5. This policy will apply to the East Font Hill low-density residential lands that are shown as the light yellow on the map. The amendment will change the maximum percentage of townhouses from 15% currently to 60%. This amendment has been initiated by the town as a result of a commitment made by the town solicitor at the Saffron Meadows Ontario Municipal Board hearing, and it will allow for better flexibility in terms of meeting density targets in these low-density residential areas. The new policy will also allow for some additional flexibility in terms of the size of single detached lots and allow for more housing choice. These lands are within a settlement area according to provincial policies where development is to be directed, and these properties are not subject to the Greenbelt Plan or the Niagara Escarpment Plan. According to the regional official plan, these lands are within the urban area boundary of Fonthill, and they're designated built-up area and greenfield area. Urban areas are the focus of long-term growth and development, and a variety of housing types are encouraged. And built-up areas are the focus of residential and employment intensification and redevelopment over the long term. The properties are designated East Fonthill Low-Density Residential Urban Living Area with the presence of a highly vulnerable aquifer. And the permitted uses within this designation include a number of residential uses such as singles and semis, accessory apartments and secondary suites, home occupation, some institutional type uses like places of worship and day nurseries, parks and parkettes, and open space linkages, as well as public uses and public and private utilities. And of course, townhouse dwellings, but only up to a maximum of 15% of the total number of dwellings within a plan of subdivision. And just to recap, this is a very short presentation. This amendment will allow the increase in that maximum number of townhouses from 15% to 60%. And if there are any follow-up questions after tonight, then please contact Barbara Weens, Director of Community Planning and Development. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ms. LaRocque. Questions from members of council with the presentation? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I presume the town is the, in terms of the applicant's presentation, so we now turn to public input. Are there any members of the public that would like to provide input on this change? Any, again, members of the public? Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to committee input. Any members of committee that would like to provide any input on this? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in a lot of ways this move is a sort of housekeeping measure, in that I think that our vision for East Fonthill was for a variety of housing and a fairly efficient use of land by way of residential, and I think the 15% was for townhouses was low, given kind of a modern sensitivity about what subdivisions ought to look like. So I think this corrects that, and that's how I view it. It's a housekeeping measure to put this in line with what we intended to all along.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Any others? Ms. LaRocque, there was a comment in the report about rear lanes, and I think that was a discussion that was when there was an open house regarding that. Do you know whether that's part of this or will be part of this?
Does the mic turn on? That's okay.
Yeah, it's on already. Just speak.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. To my knowledge, that's not part of this. That's something that would more so be dealt with through zoning.
Okay.
And so that may be coming at a later date.
Okay.
Certainly with the public meeting that we just concluded with regard to Saffron Meadows,
Right.
that is something that's proposed to be included in the zoning amendment.
Okay. I thought I saw that in the in this particular report.
I saw it as a comment, but I didn't see it included as
Okay.
but I can
Perhaps
follow up and get back to you about that.
Perhaps it can be highlighted when the report comes back.
Certainly.
Okay, that's great.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Councillor Kersey?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just reiterate what you were drawing attention to, and that is with respect to the rear lane. the language around rear lanes in the OP is fairly weak. And it has created some problems in the past. And I think that was the thinking of council, to try and strengthen that language, particularly for the developments along Port Robinson Road, because there are a number of them that will be coming forward. So if we don't, and if we just do it with zoning, I fear that we might have a conflict between interpretation of the OP and our zoning bylaw. Would it not be better to have both documents in harmony with each other going forward? So I'd ask staff maybe to have a look at that, Mr. Mayor.
I think, so that's what the allusion is to
Right.
with the open house, that I think it says the word laneways and doesn't say the word rear laneways. And so I think maybe if staff could look into that, and that can come out in the report and we can clarify it at that point. Okay, is that satisfactory?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think it was an important element
Yeah.
in discussion. Any others? Councillor Papp?
Nothing to do with that. I concur with I'm just always curious when I see the permitted uses, and I think I've asked this before. What do we mean by home occupations? And what do we mean by day nurseries that in this? I'm never clear on what that means, so that someone could set up their own child daycare center there? Or?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Papp, a day nursery is usually a larger scale, a commercial type daycare, so more of an institutional use, something that you might see in a church or a church basement.
Or could be in a
Sometimes it'll used
retail
for
area,
that as
right?
well.
Okay.
A home occupation is usually a limited type business. It's usually better defined in the zoning bylaw. And the emphasis in the zoning regulations is usually with respect to being a very limited size business so that it doesn't create a problem with the neighbors and can be easily located within a residential neighborhood.
So in terms of parking is one of the big concerns from folks, is that correct?
Correct. Normally, there are zoning provisions that require only a certain number of people to be on site at one time, and also for the provision of an additional parking space for a client.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. I need a mover for this. Councillor Papp. That Committee of the Whole receive the Community Planning and Development Report for information, and the committee recommend to council that staff prepare the necessary recommendation report with regards to the official plan amendment number 5 for council's consideration. Any further discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And it been moved by Councillor King that the special Committee of the Whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for January 15th, 2018, following council. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Take a couple-minute break as we